Two. Test 1, 2. There we go. All right, I've got the other wireless as well as a handheld, so I've got those two. All right, and I've got this computer also. Are we streaming? Are we online? Good to go. All right, hey everybody at home watching this. For those of you watching it live or recorded, we are going to walk through essentially what we'll be voting on. The biggest piece we're going to be voting on Sunday. Just seems like it's a good idea to get this information out where you can ask a lot of questions so we can all be informed by the time we're actually meeting on Sunday. So we're going to start with a quick word of prayer, and then we're going to dive right in, if you would join me. Heavenly Father, I give you thanks for this opportunity to do big things, to dream big in your kingdom, to watch you powerfully work in our lives. I pray, Lord, for wisdom and discernment. Holy Spirit, to give to us that vision that we need to understand where you are calling, guiding, and leading. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. First, just draw your attention, Carol White is with us from LCEF. She will be answering any questions that I can't answer, which hopefully is very few. And Sandy Nelson is also here as well. I've got some microphones just in case, but really what we're going to do is hold questions to the very end. So I'm going to try and walk through all of this as much as possible. And then rather than running around with a microphone, I think what I'm going to do is just have you ask a question and I'll re-ask the question. It'll just save us a little bit of time. We'll be able to go a little bit faster. So, first order of business, do not forget to be here on Sunday after the second service for the congregational meeting. It's important to be there. They usually start about 10 minutes or so after the second service. Everybody is out of the second service, so it's pretty quick afterwards. So what we're doing here tonight in the town hall is working on the church preschool expansion and understanding what it is, what the plan is, and how it impacts the next phases at Living Faith. From the beginning, we've sort of had this tension between the God-sized plan, you know, it's a really big thing that we seek to do, but also be faithful stewards. So we're going to talk about that tension here a little bit tonight. There is this God-sized, if I said to you, $1,000 shed, we'd say, oh, that's not really a faithful God-sized project. We can pay for that shed pretty easily. If I said we wanted to build a $200 million facility, you'd say, okay, that's God-sized, but it's not very good financial stewardship. So that's what we're kind of trying to find the fine line between those two and hold those both in tension. So our assumptions from the very beginning when we began this, first, I know this is the spelling mistake. I've been tweaking this to the last minute, so bear with me. Living Faith and Little Friends Early Learning Center. That's what an ELC is. So we also have to start to change our vocabulary a little bit. A preschool tends to be a 2-hour, 3-hour, 4-hour program. Ours is the only 4-hour program in Iowa, or are there other ones in Iowa? No, yeah, we're the only 4-hour program, but we're looking to expand that to before and after care as well, so it's really becoming an early learning center. So you'll see Little Friends and you'll see ELC, or Early Learning Center, but we're going to stop seeing the word preschool. Even though preschool still exists, I want to be clear about that, it's just packaged inside of the ELC, so it's an early learning center. But this symbiotic relationship, what we're looking for is for both of these two entities, and they're not separate from each other. It's important to note. Little Friends is our biggest ministry of Living Faith, but there's one budget, there's one organization. So, but when we think about these two things that happen, church and the Early Learning Center, in the one space, as we expand out, what we're going to be looking to do is have both on the hook, if you will, both taking an equal amount of faithful risk, but also for the same purpose of receiving the gifts that God pours out. So we're going to both, as equally as possible, share in these things, and you're going to see, I think, a really unique and interesting way to do that. So the Early Learning Center must be able to cover all costs for construction and its operating expenses. This is what we said from the very beginning, and if this isn't possible, from the beginning we've said the church is growing, we're pressing back into this space, that would preclude us having a preschool. It would mean the end of the preschool, which would be sad, But if that's the case, if the church needs the space, we reclaim the space, that kills the preschool. That's a very sad reality. That's a decision we would have to make. But that was our early assumption. We're holding on to that. The ELC construction is first only by necessity of continuing its existence, meaning, as I just said, if we just cleared out these back classrooms right here for extra sanctuary space, Little Friends closes. If we just build a kitchen in one of those rooms, Little Friends has to close. If we just grab one of those spaces and turn it into a youth room, it has to close. I mean, there's just, by necessity, that construction has to happen first so they can move into a building so we can reclaim the space. Now, the last bit is all dollars contributed by church members to be used only for church-side construction unless designated otherwise by the giver. So there have been a family or two, or 3 or 4 or 5, who have said, X amount of dollars, and this one is church, and this piece is preschool. So unless it's designated like that, if it's a church member donating to this project, it is church funds. And we've had several, by the way. I can't off the top of my head. It's got to be $30,000-$40,000 has been given just to the preschool by preschool parents. So it is an exciting thing. We expect that to continue as well. So here's what I mean by mutually beneficial. The Early Learning Center gains new updated facility, obviously, with several amenities. It's going to be a phenomenal early learning center. It's going to be absolutely incredible, the best in the area. Church will reclaim 2 classrooms and sanctuary space, as well as an additional fellowship space outlined in green. You'll see that outline in just a second. But what I mean by that is sanctuary space, meaning these classrooms are immediately opened up. We can knock those walls down, expand our sanctuary, do some sanctuary renovation. We have the room that's right next door. I believe it's labeled the youth room. That would be wide open, no preschool in there. Then we have what's the nursery back there, wide open, no preschools in there anymore. So we've already reclaimed all of that space. Plus, I'm going to show you in a second the outline in green. And then the ELC benefits from the leadership and oversight of the congregation. We have an awesome team and a great culture here at Living Faith that Little Friends benefits from. Our council, our elders, the staff here works well together, so that's a benefit for the ELC. And then Living Faith benefits in the intangibles like brand recognition. Oh, you go to that awesome early learning center? Yeah, that's over there. It's part of Living Faith Lutheran Church. Just the amount of energy you get from cars in the parking lot over the summer, where during the summer, without these camps that we have going on right now, this place is dead, and it just feels different if you're driving past in the neighborhood and there's cars and there's kids outside and things are going on. So, and then this last bit, the potential for the ELC profitability that we will be looking at in just a second. So, this is that area in green I was talking about, and I think I made it make it. So this is the sanctuary where it says altar is where I'm standing, where it says sanctuary is where you are. So that green spot right there, just drawing your attention to, that's that room over there called the fireside room, that Little Friends will be blowing that out as part of their entry. So immediately, once that wing is done, we gain a big area on a Sunday morning where people can be milling out here, drinking coffee, they can be hanging out. We've got a bigger space. I think I have one more on here. Nope, sorry. That space just to the left of the green, that's a new meeting room that could be used for Bible study. Beautiful new facility in there for Bible studies. So we gain a bunch just by building this. The church actually gets to start to backfill some of the space that the preschool is currently in once we have an ELC. So there's already a great deal of benefit just in these simple steps. Now the funding. So Living Faith is going to secure the loan for the entire construction amount, up to $2.7 million. I want to make sure I hit that home. It's Living Faith. There is no Little Friends, Inc. Little Friends can't borrow dollars. They're a ministry of ours. This is good news for us in the long run, and I'll get to that towards the end of the presentation, but it's actually a benefit for us if we are one singular entity and one budget. So this puts us, remember I said risk and reward were both on the hook? At the end of the day, Living Faith is on the hook for this $2.7 million. The business plan indicates that the ECC ELC, sorry, I got that, I forgot to catch that one, T, fills towards capacity, it eventually not only be able to pay the entirety of the loan, it will also become profitable. Reasonably, we can expect $100 to $150 or so thousand a year. If even we get the bare bones standard, industry standard 5%, we're still looking at tens of thousands of dollars. Why do we believe? Because of the projected growth of the community, quality of the program, brand new facility. If we're running at full capacity, $100,000 to $150,000 is probably conservative in terms of profit. Now, if you're wondering to yourself, oh, profit, but we're a nonprofit. That doesn't violate our nonprofit status as long as we don't take the $200,000 or $150,000 and turn back and give it to you guys as though you're owners of it, or give it to me as though I'm the owner of this place. As long as we continue to use it for mission and ministry, it's not considered taxable profit. It's just the word that says revenue over above the expenses that are required is our profit. So the business plan does indicate a shortfall for a short period of up to 6 months as enrollment ramps up. So that's understandable. You open a new facility, and the industry standard is to say it's going to take some time to build some momentum. Now, I actually don't necessarily, we're building this in, because we're being conservative. I'm not necessarily certain that this is the case. In fact, a lot of people have said that this isn't the case for us because, one, we have great brand recognition already. That's 6 months to actually, most centers take up to about 2 years to turn a profit because they're starting from scratch. They're literally bringing a new ELC into a neighborhood. The program has never existed. They're hiring new teachers, hiring a director. We've got 20-ish years in this community of having the best program available and having waiting lists. So we have a great advantage there. Also, this isn't your average community. People are moving here like crazy. They're building houses. People are buying them like crazy, and it's all young families coming in. So the need is actually very high right now for this sort of a thing. But it's that shortfall that's right there in the budget that causes a lender to get a little twitchy. So because of that, LCEF has encouraged us to consider putting the about $425K of the over $500,000 already raised into a savings account to be held as debt reserve. Okay, so some of you are shaking your head, nodding your head yes. Some of you are like, I have no idea what this is. Totally going to be able to walk you through this. This is sort of like using those dollars as collateral, all right? Here's what we mean. Debt reserve is essentially this piggy bank. It's kind of like a money market account controlled by LCEF. So what we would do is take those dollars that we have, deposit them in that piggy bank, and then LCEF gives to us the dollars that we have borrowed. Now, we then turn around and pay those dollars back. Everybody's understanding this is how loans work, right? This is how mortgages work. Now, if by chance we were unable to make a payment, what LCEF would do would be to draw from that piggy bank, from those funds that we put into a debt reserve to cover that. If this happens, we're going to get into the process of what this means in just a second, but if this happens, the next time we have a month where we're ahead, especially the preschool is ahead, it is a requirement that those funds are paid back first, okay? And that's not even, although I had initially said I'm going to ask the council to make that as a resolution, I don't have to because LCEF actually is the one who says has to be paid back first. So it's not even something I could take back if I wanted to. So here's how this debt reserve works. Like I said, a lot like collateral for the loan. The church donor funds are placed in an LCEF savings account with an interest rate that's historically above market. It's also kind of another positive is we're taking all of these dollars and we're putting them in a money market account to actually gain interest. And I forget what it was, but it was several times what the normal market is. The LCEF does a little bit better job on that. So we'd actually be earning dollars on the dollars that we have in this debt reserve. We can't touch the funds for any purpose. meaning we couldn't go and use those funds for operational expenses. Now, I know that's been a point of contention here. There's a little bit of history at the church. I've had several people ask, could we put those dollars in a separate account so we know they're there? And I've always said we don't really need to do that. This would be doing that. So there wouldn't be a case of, well, we didn't make payroll, and not like this has been an issue for us for 10 years, but if that were a problem, we can't go to those funds for operational expenses. It's not something that's allowable, which is, I think, a bonus, a positive. So after 12 months of timely principal and interest payments, so not out of the reserve, LCEF will release 12 months worth of reserve and will be dissolved after 2 successive fiscal year income statements indicating a positive debt service coverage ratio of 1:1. When you ask that question, Carol is going to answer it because I think I understand it, but I'm not positive I understand it. So, well, here's what I do understand is, so as the payments are being made for 12 months, and if we don't miss any of those payments, if we're good for 12 months, they'll take essentially half of that and release it, and it's no longer debt reserve back into our normal accounts, et cetera. If we go 24 successive months, then we're good, and this is not a problem. If, let's say, we had to draw 2 months over the first 24 months, we just have to get to that place where we've got the successive months. Now, we think if we're going to be tight, it's going to be in those first few months, so it could be a couple of years until all of it has been fully released to us for use. Now, here's the good news. We've already been saying that we get a bunch of our facility back that we can immediately have gains. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but what I'm saying is the dollars that we're looking to put in the debt reserve aren't designed or aren't ready to be utilized just yet anyways. We have a lot of construction that has to be done. A lot of energy goes into that before we even can think about moving into the church side phase of it. And this last one is the LCF won't touch the funds unless things go very much sideways. There are other options we have at our disposal. Things like we could say, can we for 6 months or 12 or 24 months do interest only? So reduce the overall cost monthly. That would be good. It would mean that it's not pulled out of the reserve if things are really tight. Also, the problem there is that's not a full payment of loan, principal and interest. So that month that we make a principal only or an interest only won't count towards our 12 or 24 month to get those funds released. So there's a give and take on this. Moving on, I know you're drinking from a fire hose right now. I promise I'm going to back up and we'll ask all the questions in the whole wide world. So like I said, we won't be looking to use those dollars for several months after the Early Learning Center is finished anyways. So let's talk about the risk and reward. If things go poorly for the ELC, LCEF may be required to draw on the debt reserve. I don't think it's likely, but if it were to happen, it is required that the reserve be repaid first. I'm going to drive this home. So if we have $425,000 in that account, 1 month it looks like, we're about $10,000 short, and it gets pulled out of that reserve, then the next month, the preschool comes in and they are ahead 15, well then 10 is going right back in, and we're squaring that up, okay? And that, as I said, it looks like 6 months tight, and then we start to draw an actual profit off of the school. If you remember that from the business plan that we presented several months ago. All right. Then if the ELC were to fail, so everyone wants to know, what if this doesn't go well? Yes, we are on the hook for the Early Learning Center. We would close the ELC, renovate the space for church space. So this space, while the scenario is unlikely, there is a little bit of a benefit to it. That would be the fastest way to solve the problems that we've been trying to solve for the church. Now, it's a much bigger problem for Little Friends that ceases to exist. But the two things that we've always been saying that we need more of, first and foremost, primarily, is large group fellowship space. We can put tables out enjoy time together, have potlucks, kitchen, and classroom space. So we're going to look at the floor plan here in a minute and show you how that works. But if things go as planned, we simply gain interest on the money that we are not spending at the moment. We begin building with the cushion of the ELC bringing in income year over year. What I mean by that, in case you're wondering why it says ECC, I had to go back and change these more than once because I get confused, Early Childhood Center versus Early Learning Center, but it is Early Learning Center. I know this for sure now. So the reason why it's a good thing that there's one budget and that we're on the hook for this loan is when the ELC is bringing in $100,000 to $150,000 a year in profit, and we go and look to take out a loan to build a gymnasium, there's one budget, and they will take into account that entire budget. So they'll look and see $200,000 above what their operating costs were for this year. That is helpful when you're looking to borrow a large sum of money to build something to grow into. I also want to be cautious here. That's, in my opinion, a bad long-term strategy. Very good short-term strategy. We don't want to become the church that's dependent on an ELC being successful. We don't want that. I've seen a lot of churches with schools in that sort of a relationship go sick in a hurry when the school starts to struggle, neighborhood turns. I was at a church where the school was there for 75 years. And for 70 of those years, things were great. And then something in the community changed, and people moved out. And it took the whole church with it because they were dependent on the tuition dollars from their school. So moving forward, why a debt reserve? For one thing, this is, in my opinion, a fulfillment of the commitment to not use any church donor funds for the ELC. If those funds are drawn down, they're replaced. If they can't be replaced and we have to close the ELC, well, those dollars that went to pay for that piece over there, that's now church. And it's not ELC anymore. So we do have to renovate that space, but we'll have space quickly. So those dollars would still go for church use. It provides an incentive for Living Faith and her members to support and promote the ELC. It is in our best interest as members of this church, whether you've got little ones or your little ones have little ones, right? Regardless, if the ELC goes well, those dollars are used for mission and ministry. Like I said, I don't want to become dependent on them that we have to pay salaries with these dollars. But if at the end of the day, the council is looking and saying, with our offerings, we are covering all of our operational expenses, salaries, and everything else, and now we have to decide what to do with $150,000. That's a great problem, right? That's the best problem in the whole world. That's the ultimate goal. All right, so we ensure that those donor funds cannot be used by Living Faith for operational expenses. In this model, there is no way those dollars that have been given can disappear anywhere else. It is simply not possible. Not even if everybody turned Dr. Evil overnight and wanted to. LCEF wouldn't allow us to do it. It's the fastest way to expand the facility, giving the church classroom space on Sunday mornings for children's church, as well as expanded fellowship space, etc. Meaning, by this, immediately we get 2 classrooms back. Like I said, they move into their new building. Those are 2 spaces available on a Sunday morning, Bible study during the week. We have the ELC classrooms, if we needed them, available to us for children's church, which would be appropriate for little ones, less appropriate for, the Tuesdays or Thursday ladies sitting in there on the tiny little chairs is probably not what we're looking for. But little kids on Sunday morning, absolutely, can be using that space, and junior high and high school kids, whatever that might be. So we immediately actually solve some of the problem of Sunday morning classroom space, during the week classroom space. The large group space is what we're still going to be waiting on. All right, now take a look. So more funds, obviously useful for construction side for the church, gaining interest on those funds, and we're not using them anyways. All right, I'm kind of rushing through this. But I want to get to this part. So this is a little hard. Again, where it says altar is where I'm standing. Blue is the preschool wing. And if you look at that chunk that's highlighted, or I'm sorry, outlined in red, that is it's about 90% existing structure. That little bit that's in green doesn't exist, but there's a spot for it right out there. That space, if we were to go ahead and, if the ELC were to close, if it just could not support itself, and we go, oh no, we're stuck with an ELC that we have to renovate, how can we possibly do this? I want to show you how this can work. So right here in green, on the right-hand side, it's a little bit off because it was hard to figure out how to do this. Those are 3 of the classroom sizes that we are planning for the church renovation. And you're going to see how much bigger the ELC is in a second, because the ELC is designed to have 20-plus kids with like state regulation space, so those have to be bigger rooms. Our rooms are big enough. We designed them around the idea of 10 to 12 people in a room. And you have 6 of those, and that's going to be great. So that piece right there, if you look at it in scale, it's only in that tiny bottom left. In fact, if you were to double it, we only are using that much of the space over there. So what does that tell us? We would have plenty of space in the ELC converted into church space for all classroom needs that we would need, anything we could need for classrooms, for anything that we would need for office space, for meeting space. And then you see that chunk that's outlined in red right there, that can all be opened up. In fact, it's planned for some of it to be opened up anyways for fellowship space. So what we could end up with, if you're kind of following with me looking up here, is as if I were walking out of the church, there would be some fellowship space, but then a fellowship room where we could put 10, 15 tables, and we could have a good-sized event. In fact, rough calculations, and depending on what walls we knock down and how we open it up, we could put 300 people for a banquet in there, for a funeral a meal in there with the kitchen over there. And then there are already in the plans going to be doors here. So you could walk out these doors, fellowship, turn to the left, discipleship wing, I think is what we'd end up calling that, where our classrooms are, resource centers, youth room, all of that stuff. And that would be the worst case scenario in terms of ELC has to close. We don't gain the benefit of all of that brings with us, the $100,000, $150,000 a year. The upside is we'd be in our space way faster. And we'd solve those 2 problems, classroom space, large group fellowship space. So I know you guys are going to have 1,000 questions on debt reserve stuff. I think that is the end, yes. So I'm going to just skip the slides back to about here and just be ready for your questions, all right? So I'm just going to point you out, and then you ask a question. I'm going to repeat it for everybody at home. Who's got a question, debt reserve or otherwise? Does it matter to me? Larry.
Yeah, mine's not the
Okay.
What kind of objective indicators have we seen or developed or what have you to know that we are still a growing church? I mean, obviously, we don't see the numbers now, obviously. And have we been in contact with the people that were members that we have not seen, or have we done anything to give a positive indicator that we're still growing?
Good question. I'm just going to grab my water over here. The question is, do we have positive indicators that the church is still growing? Because you're right, because of coming out of COVID, it's a little bit challenging to figure out. There's not a lot of precedent for this to how to figure it out. So industry standard as far as churches go to figure that out, the things that people are using, we're going to find out in like 5 to 10 years if these metrics are useful. But all the metrics that are there, we're doing well in. So if that turns out to be a garbage metric in 10 years, I can't tell you. But some things like the giving, has your giving gone down significantly? No, ours has been steady this entire time. We're finishing we're probably going to end up just below 100% funded from our offerings this year, but that's okay. Our costs are way down. It's okay. But I mean, in a year of a pandemic, to end up at like 99% of offerings is pretty phenomenal. So we're going to be somewhere 97 to 99% probably. Fantastic. I take the concurrent viewers on YouTube, so the number of people who watch our service on YouTube, and then I give it a multiplier because they're probably not watching it alone. And then our numbers come back as if they are growing. The other bit is that we've got a number of people who have visited us and have chosen to join the church during the pandemic. So actually, Dan, I think, has 6 or 7 couples going through the new member class in the fall. So from all of those metrics, and that each week we have, and the timing is bad, as we get more and more people each week, but it's also summer where fewer and fewer people are in town. So it absolutely feels like that growth is starting to come back. In fact, we're almost back to pre-COVID numbers on a Sunday morning. If you count the YouTube numbers, we're above what we would normally be at this time of year. Good question. Marlene, yes?
We have close to 500,000, and then we're going to turn it over, and then we're going to borrow, and I assume the interest we get back is going to be less than what our loan expense is. So somebody explain the theory behind wanting to pay more for your own money.
Yeah, it's a good question. So if we have the money on hand, why not use those dollars? Why put them in an account and then borrow money? Why not use those dollars? To our original assumption, when I said to the congregation, and I think a lot of people gave in this good faith, when I said, if you donate to the church building fund, we're not going to use it for the ELC. And I think there is some fear out there that if we started down that process, then we would just keep chasing the rabbit. Maybe if it's not going well, how long are we going to wait? 12 months, 24 months? What if the ELC isn't making a profit? Or what if they're only making $5,000? Like all of those kind of questions, this takes all of those questions out of our hands. So as hard as it would be for me to say we have to close Little Friends ELC, that would be incredibly difficult for me to say. And it'd be hard to bring it in front of a congregation and say we have to vote to close Little Friends. Putting it in the debt reserve, the metrics are in place. We miss, I think it is, if we miss 6 payments in the first 12 months, they just go, this is no longer solvent or whatever it is. And I'm not sure on those numbers. You have those on your fingertips? 6 in the first 24 months. Okay. 6 in the first 24 months. LCF calls it. So it's not even me that has to do it. It's not the congregation that has to do it. I think there is a certain amount of security in that for us, because I think there is that sort of like love Jesus, bleeding heart. I don't want to do anything to hurt Little Friends and these little kids. And there's always a danger in that to start to become poor stewards, because we're chasing after something that we're in love with that God isn't necessarily blessing. So I don't disagree that it's a little bit strange. Yes, we're making money, interest rate on a money market, while spending money in interest rate on a loan that we're taking out. But this is that security that says these dollars will be here when all is said and done. They're not going to go. We're not going to have another situation where we go, where did the dollars go that everybody gave? Well, they went into the school somehow, and that's how they just evaporated. It just won't happen. Good question. Keith. Yeah.
You can't get a student loan without your parents signing for that and having some collateral.
Yep. Yeah, It's similar essentially to saying like we're a parent co-signing on a student loan. So yes, this kid is borrowing the dollars, but at the end of the day, I'm on the hook for it. Is kind of what we're saying, up to this amount of money. But really, it allows us the opportunity to force everybody to take up as much responsibility as possible. Because again, it's in our benefit. If it's in Living Faith's benefit, if the ELC goes well, so we get our money freed up faster, and construction, all of those things quicker down the road if the ELC does well. I like being in that position. I like all of us in that position.
I think the LC has a better chance of surviving versus us growing 25%.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong.
The market, the way you explained it in the past, and
Yeah,
what I see out there and talk to everybody in the neighborhood, talk to them,
yeah,
what they need, and you see if these people aren't popping up, these not daycare centers, but early days, they're
yeah.
popping up because there's not a market for it.
Right. Yeah. So, and people have had questions about that. What about all these other? There's a new one right down the road. There's another one new in by Lifetime. There's a new one out by the Fleet Farm. All of these care centers, is that eating up our market? No, they're stapling together as fast as they can because the market is intensely upside down. I mean, there are not enough quality slots. There are slots out there. You can drop your kid off at a truck stop and pay some guy $10 to watch him, right? But like a quality 5-star QRS, we're one of, I think, 2 in Dallas County. Little Friends is one of 2 or 3 in this area that are 5-star rated. We also have the benefit of, KinderCare has a brand name, but you don't know what's that KinderCare going to be like. Primrose over by Lifetime has a brand name. Is it really good though? Is it brand name like Walmart's a brand name, or is it brand name like Costco? We have a brand with brand recognition already built in, great reputation. Our SEO web searches go back, 8 years at least to reviews. So we are so far ahead of those people who are buying property that we already have, building a building, hiring a director they don't have yet, hiring teachers they don't have yet, and then advertising to the community, hey, bring your kids here, we're brand new. We're in a much, much better position in the market than that.
That was also, as an indicator, I think the growth of Des Moines Christian and Valley, where they are growing, I think shows you that there are young people who want their children in a faith-based.
Yeah. And there's almost nobody providing for that market. There is Des Moines Christian. Hope has a preschool, but it's a different sort of a scenario. It's not necessarily the same level as ours. So as far as that goes, there's really nothing a lot in this area for exactly this. Yeah. Andrew.
Yeah, so 2 questions. One is, so the 2.7 is exclusively for the ELC.
Yes. 2.7 exclusively for ELC. Yep.
I think I'll still pick that up. And then the second one is, so that means we need 24 months of payments or whatnot to get our $400,000 back before we consider building the second half of the project?
Well, so yes, here's the question is when that is released. So if the ELC goes really well, after 12 months, we'll get a portion of that back. Plus, the capital campaign continues on. So we've had close to, or actually it's a little bit over, $500,000 donated to us that's in the bank right now. But there's still another $500,000 out there that people have pledged that we'll be pursuing. So all of those funds aren't included in the debt reserve. The debt reserve, I've been kind of tossing around 500 because it's about what we have and it's about what they're going to put in. It's closer to 425,000. So we'll have a good amount of cash on hand still to be able to start projects like the architectural drawings, doing the dirt work and all that kind of stuff. So just because but again, we would be making those decisions. Like if we've missed 5 in 24 months, we're not going to start spending money that direction. We're going to be starting making a plan in a different direction. Yep, that's a good question. Other questions on this? Yes, sir. Lou. I don't want to, this is being recorded, Lou, but the answer is yes. Our program is better than Lutheran Church of Hope's program. I said I didn't want to say it, then I just said it like it was no big deal. Am I right in that, Sandy? I told you. Yeah. We honestly do have, so one of my favorite stories to tell is a member of our church pulled me aside. It was actually after a different meeting and said, they have a little one who they did put into our preschool, but she just had this little one. She's a brand new mom, never been a mom before. And she goes, so I have a friend that works for Iowa State Extension Fund doing all the QRS preschool stuff. Called her friend and said, in your opinion, tell me what is the best preschool in the area. And she goes, hey, doorknob, it's the one at your church. But she just assumed like a little preschool like we have here in facilities that aren't really designed for it, it's probably not going to be the number one preschool in the area. I've always thought this is one of our biggest problems. And it's one of the reasons why people have asked, why is it that we haven't been able to turn a profit with the preschool previously? A big piece of that is me telling Sandy not to. Because number one, I don't want us to be dependent on that. But number two, all of those dollars that come in, they don't line her pockets or the teacher's pockets. They definitely don't send it home with the kids. It goes into the program and into the rooms. Why do we do that? Because as a parent walks in, we're already asking them to spend a crazy amount of money, which is just the industry standard. It's what everybody charges for preschool. And they're walking into a church, and then they're coming over to a preschool room that wasn't designed to be a preschool room, and there's a half-wall temporary here, and all these things. And you have to pack your own lunch because we don't have a kitchen, right? All of these things we tell them. I want every dime up until this point to go back and say, do the best you possibly can with what you have to give to these parents just one more reason to send their kids here. When we go back to what I think is going to be the biggest selling point is we've got this awesome brand recognition, but now our facilities, top-level facilities, will match the quality of the program. And we already don't have a problem getting families here. Our registration numbers for next year are spot on. I mean, we're not missing a beat. We have 13 on the wait list. Yeah, and we've had several people who've moved into the area or called us and said, "Do you guys offer full-time care?" Like 1 year. Yeah, Kathy. So that's a great question. And once upon a time, this was oh, yes. Sorry. Thank you, Kevin. This is a good one, very much worthy of repeat. The question is, do we stand a chance to gain much for church membership from the preschool? This is a strategy and a plan that goes back some time. My dad being the principal he was, growing up in Lutheran schools, this was sort of the mindset was, as people move in the area, want a really quality, good school, they come here, maybe for a tuition break or whatever it is, they join the church grows in membership. That was a good strategy right up until culture shifted a little bit, and people got real accustomed to, number one, paying for their kids to do anything. Play soccer. Used to be, soccer was free. You go to school, you join the soccer team. Now there's travel soccer, league soccer. And you used to play football by going to school, playing football. We've got flag football, we have all these different things. So people are just accustomed to, I don't join my son's soccer team. I pay for him to play soccer. I don't join my kid's church school. I pay for him to go to school there. That mindset is now in the culture, and we tend not to see very many people send their kids here and then migrate in. We have some historically. I know the Darnells don't mind me putting them on the spot, but when was the last time Drew was in preschool here? 10, 14 years ago? So that culture has shifted a little bit, and I also don't want that to be our strategy. It's not, if it happens, we're extremely excited about it. And as we know, the preschool, or the ELC, has every interest in living faith doing well. So they are 100%, every time a new family joins, new couple, new kids are here, all of our literature is available to them. Sandy makes sure to introduce them to me, talk, worship a little bit. So if somebody was new to the community, felt like a desire to join a congregation, we may well pick them up. But here's what I usually meet, is I say, oh, how are you? Nice to meet you. Do you guys have a church home? Oh yeah, we go to. Because if you're going to pay for the best, and it's going to cost you, the best preschool, happens to be faith-based, and that's important to you as a Christian, you probably already have a church home, unless you just moved here. But if you happen to always have gone to Hope or to Heartland Presbyterian or whatever church in the area, and that's your church home, but you want your kid to come here because it's a great Christian program, you're not going to leave your church home because you're that faithful of a Christian. But it's a good question. It used to be true. It just isn't really any longer. Thank you. Good question. Kevin.
You talk about the grant that we got from the state and where that fits in, where that goes in this project.
So all the state dollars we got in the grant was the question. Where do those go? Where do they fit in the project? There's been a little bit of shift. I don't know if you guys have noticed that some weird things have happened in the construction industry lately, like wood and such. So cost increases of that project increased as far as estimates go. And then we got this gift of $300,000 that was built in for that equipment that shrinks back down. We kind of ended up in about the same place. So that works out. Now, we can't spend those dollars on anything but what it's given for. So we can't put those dollars in the debt reserve, and we have to spend those dollars in the next 12 months. But yeah, we actually have in the bank account, when you separate everything out, we've got $500,000 here for that have been given. Okay, so we don't count that for our checking account. We've got this other big chunk that was given from the state. We don't count that. So over here, it looks like we're doing okay. And then you look at the total picture and you go, geez, like, kind of a big pile of cash we're sitting on, which is nice. But it's all spoken for, of course. Was that a hand, Dave, or a scratch? Okay. It's corner of my eye. I didn't quite see it. Questions? Yeah, Marlene.
Would you go over the time frame again? Once the preschool is built, then what's the next step time-wise? How long before, if things keep going well, how long before our building is complete?
Ooh, complete's a big question because, depending, if everything goes well, however, this fall, not this fall, next fall, so a year from this fall, we'll have an educational wing and all of this space back. So in a little bit over a year, we'll be in a very different place. After that, we've got to go at least 12 months. So now we're looking at fall of 2022. We have to go at least 12 months, so fall of 2023, and everything goes well, big chunk of debt reserve comes off, so then we actually can make some different decisions and go, okay, now we can be doing dirt work. Thank you, sir. Now we can be doing dirt work out here, so that could be fall of 2023, meaning that by fall of 2024, we could be close to finished because we can actually start doing some of this work at the same time. That's the first hardest part is we can't tear down classrooms to work on the sanctuary until there's a place for those people to go. But once that happens, things can start to happen concurrently. In fact, I think that we'll be making a decision this time next year to redo this whole space, the sanctuary, pulling those down and putting ourselves in a different position, maybe some stage changing. There's been some discussions about changes up in front a little bit here too. So that could be as close to a year and a half away to really feel the changes, probably 3 to 5 years till it's done. Yes, ma'am.
While we're in the transition and the preschool wing's been built and we're working on building the new one, do we have access to using that preschool wing to expand the church ministries?
Yes. So the question is, will we have the ability to use the preschool space for church stuff before we get everything finished in the church? There's this unfortunate rumor that I unfortunately started, and I didn't mean to. And that rumor is, at one point I said, hey, I meant to say, hey, everybody, great news. When we're all done, we won't have to share space. How it came off, I just kind of miscommunicated it was, hey, everybody, you can't use the preschool. That's not what I meant. Like, we don't have to use the space. Wouldn't that be nice to not have to use the space? But absolutely we can use the space. Now, like I said, it's the more we use it for purposes outside of its design, it's just a hassle. So if the men's Bible study on Friday wants to meet in a preschool room, they're going to have to drag big boy chairs in there. They're going to have to drag a big boy table in there. Or they could just meet in a room that already has big boy tables and chairs in it. And like maybe on Sunday, for the little ones, they would go over there, and then we wouldn't have to move chairs and tables around. So yes, absolutely available. Little Friends has always worked hard with us to find compromise on using space. There's been times when there's been a little bit of tension. Always worked through it well, so I'm not worried about that at all. Yeah, Keith. Yeah. Yeah, and kind of back to this slide, I'm not sure. It's hard for me to get an impression if you guys are really appreciating how cool this is. That green space right there will be right there. So just imagine on that back wall, there's a door that would be in that bottom left corner of that green space, or I'm sorry, the bottom right corner of the green space, from the sanctuary out into a room. So if you got a screaming kid, you can be back there with the kid crying a little bit, gets out of control, right out that door, and you're in a sound-proofed space with windows. You can still look into the sanctuary. As you walk in our front doors, that whole space will be wide open for coffee fellowship. We actually gain a lot of space just in that green bit right there. And then the conference room next door to it. Awesome Bible study space. Brand new. It's going to be awesome. So just doing the preschool wing, or the ELC wing, gives to us a great deal of advantage, moves us in the right direction. Yeah. Long before Sandy retires. Yeah, thank you, Larry. We got to get this done long before Sandy retires. Yeah. Yeah. Shut up, Larry. Other questions or questions for Carol? What? Oh, what's the 111? You got that microphone? Where'd that go? Oh, here it is. Let's see. You're live.
Thank you. 1.1 to 1. Let's tackle the last one first. That's your amount of annual debt service required. Your existing mortgage and the payment on the $2.7 million with a 30-year AM and all these kinds of assumptions is going to be right about $212,000. There are ways we can get a little less, but let's have that number in mind, $200,000. So 1.1 is the amount of operating income. That means we throw out building fund, special gifts, operating income between the church and the ELCA. 1-to-1 is enough after paying all the bills and the debt, right? You've covered everything, broke even. We're saying 1.1, take that 200,000, it has to be $20,000 higher than just breaking even. That's what the 1.1 to 1 means. Debt service coverage ratio. Does that make sense? Clear as mud. How are we doing? Okay.
That is what I thought it was, but I was like, 20,000 seems like such a weird, random, whatever. not my
We
job.
want you to do better than break even. When you're doing that, you're building your own reserves as well.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes, Marlene.
Are we guaranteed a loan for the second edition?
Good question. Are we guaranteed a loan for the second one? We're not guaranteed a loan for the first one. I think we are actually in a better position for the second loan if this goes well. And the reason is because our membership as a growing congregation is going to grow, let's say, the same whether we do the ELC or not. So that growth still has to take into account the fact that we have a fair amount of debt already that just kind of came with the place when we found the keys for it. And then to say that we're gonna borrow a big piece of money, probably $2 to $2.5 million for the rest, without the additional $100,000 to $200,000 income profit from the ELC, I think that would be a tougher sell than to say, look, we've got at that point, let's say we've gone from 500 in those gifts to $1 million. We have $1 million in the bank. This is what our operating expenses are if you just look at church side, we are doing well ahead, 100, 110% of budget, whatever we are. And we've got the ELC bringing in $150,000 a year. You take that to LCEF versus we go to LCEF and say we have $500,000 in the bank, $700,000 in a mortgage, and we're ahead by 30 or 40 grand a year. See what I'm saying? I think we're in a better position because that's that unified budget. That's why that's so helpful. We're in this unified budget position where LCEF will look at the whole plate and go, these are all the finances together. So if the ELC goes well, it is better for us.
But there's not a guarantee that even if it goes really well, that they will give us one.
Correct. There is a guarantee if things go really, really bad, we've got space to renovate. I mean, it's actually, it's kind of a safety net in that regard. I mean, would it be optimal to renovate that space? No. Will it serve our purposes really actually pretty well? Yeah, it really does. So we're taking this is what I like about it. It's not so simple. It's not we're going to build a $20,000 shed, because then you'd be saying, Pastor Luke, you're not being faithful, stepping out in faith and trusting God to do it. You're trusting that we can find an extra 20 grand. That's not a big deal. But it isn't this thing that's not able to be accomplished. In fact, I think it's a risk for us to do, and even if it doesn't go well, if we're incorrect on that, we've got a landing spot, and that puts us in a good position either way. Lou.
Does our preschool, what communication on a regular basis do they have with the parents of the children that are coming here?
With the kids who are members but not in the preschool? Or
In the preschool, and do high schools have a school board meeting?
mm-hmm.
Do we have any type of a communication with those parents there to make them feel more comfortable with our church and maybe joining us?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So yes, all anything. So we have a staff meeting every week. If there's ever a slide. What? Oh, sorry. You're right. Repeat. So the question is, do we have some cross communication for those parents of the ELC kids about how awesome our church is? And the answer is absolutely. Anything that we do, we have a staff meeting every week, and so if the church, and Sandy's a part of that, maybe have a slide or something of something that's coming up, we kick that over to Sandy. She puts it out on the Realm. Here's the cool thing is, all those parents are on our Realm, so if I post something out there, they all see it. Sandy can post in the Little Friends group on the Realm specifically too. Plus then you've got every function that we have, all of the graduations, all of the Happy Birthday Jesus, the Easter celebrations, the Fall Festival, all of these things happen right in this space, and I kind of MC them. I usually we do an opening prayer. I always do a skit with Sandy, kind of presenting what we're talking about, pray with the kids. I lead chapel also for two of the classes, 2 of the days, I should say, every week. So there's actually a fair amount of contact between at least me and the church in general with those parents. Yeah. Yep, they get all of that information. Did I miss anything, Sandy? What else would you throw in there?
No, that was what I wanted.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, we would love more, so,
Yeah.
when there are opportunities, in the past, we've had prayer partners, and we've had different activities, so come, be a part of it, we would love that. I think the more cross communication, the more likely people will come, because we can't be the only ones who use the emissary church to the friends.
Yeah. And it's there's a sense about motivating humans where when things are going really well, when I say, man, our preschool is awesome, it's going really well, people go, cool. And then I go, church is going really well, and people go, cool. But if I were to say, listen, if this doesn't go well, things don't go well, then people go, oh, how can I help? And so this is a way to not say things are really bad, because things aren't really bad, but to say this is really important. We are on the hook for $2.7 million. And if we do this well, boys and girls, that means we'll be able to secure a big loan that is affordable to build the awesome church stuff we want, which is something I can motivate people with. We can all together get motivated to be a part of that versus to say, they're fine, they're going to do their thing over there, and then we're going to do our thing over here. See, this forces us to put each other's interests first, which is good. Any other questions? Boy, you guys are making it easy on me. All right, there we go. About an hour, not bad. Let's close in prayer. Father God, I thank you for tonight, for the opportunity to present what is truly, in my opinion, exciting, an incredibly big decision for the congregation. But at the end of the day, we believe that it is your will and your plan. I pray, Spirit, that you would just keep making this as clear and discernible as possible so we wouldn't mess it up. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks, guys. Thank you.